A young Italian boy lost everything when a flood took his parents' lives. Alone and penniless, he had no home and no future ahead of him. But his father had taught him well, and the boy refused to give up. He thought carefully about what he could do, and soon an idea came to him. He walked into town and rented the smallest, cheapest space he could find in the busy marketplace. With the last of his money, he bought paper, ink, and a pen. Above his tiny shop, he hung a sign that read "Wisdom for Sale," while merchants around him sold cloth, food, and household goods from their large, attractive stores. The boy stood outside his humble shop, calling out to passers-by, offering wisdom at good prices. Most people thought he was mad. They laughed at him, mocked his ragged clothes and tiny shop, and shouted jokes as they passed. But the boy remained patient and calm. One day, a wealthy merchant's son heard the commotion and approached the shop. The young man was rich, but not very clever. He didn't understand what the boy was selling and asked how much wisdom cost per kilo. The boy replied that he didn't sell wisdom by weight, but by quality. The merchantess' son placed a coin on the counter and asked for a coin's worth of wisdom. The boy became serious. He pocketed the money, asked the young man to sit, and studied his face carefully. Then he took out paper, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and wrote something down. He folded the paper, waved his hand over it 3 times, and handed it to his customer. It read, "It is not wise to stand and watch 2 people fighting." The merchant's son rushed home excitedly and showed his father what he had bought. His father was furious. He screamed that his son was a fool for paying money for such obvious advice and immediately went to the shop to demand a refund. When he arrived, he threw the paper at the boy and called him a thief. The boy calmly replied that if the merchant wanted his money back, he must return the wisdom itself, not just the paper. He insisted that the father sign a document promising his son would never follow the advice and would always stand and watch people fighting. A crowd gathered and agreed with the boy's logic. Embarrassed, the father signed the document and got his money back, relieved to escape what seemed like a minor problem. Now, the king of that region had 2 jealous queens who constantly argued. Their servants were equally hostile to each other. One day, both queens sent their maids to the marketplace, and both wanted to buy the same melon. A fierce fight broke out between them. The merchant's son happened to pass by and, remembering his father's warning, stopped to watch. When the maids returned to the palace, they told their queens everything. Each queen demanded the merchant's son testify as a witness for her maid, threatening to have him executed if he refused. Terrified, the merchant and his son rushed back to the Italian boy for help. For a large sum, the boy advised the son to pretend to be insane when brought before the king. The plan worked perfectly, and the king dismissed him as a madman. The merchant's son then returned for more advice. For another fee, the boy told him to wait for the right moment when the king was relaxed, and in good spirits, then confess everything and ask for forgiveness. The young man chose a beautiful evening after the king had dined well. When he told the whole story, the king found it amusing and pardoned him completely. Alone afterward, the king grew curious about this mysterious boy and his extraordinary wisdom. He summoned him to the palace and asked if he had wisdom suitable for a king. The boy said he did, but it would cost a fortune. Without hesitation, the king paid the boy, went through his ritual of sitting, thinking, studying the king's face and the sky, breathing deeply, and writing. He folded the paper, waved his hand over it, and presented it to the king. It read, "Think deeply before you do anything." The king was deeply impressed. He ordered these words, written in gold, on all his cups and plates, and embroidered on his pillows and sheets, so he would never forget them. Months passed, and the king fell gravely ill. What he didn't know was that one of his queens and his minister were plotting to kill him. They had bribed the royal doctor to poison his medicine. One evening, as the king lifted his golden cup to drink, he noticed the words written there, "Think deeply before you do anything." He paused to think. The doctor, watching nervously, was consumed by guilt. Certain the king had discovered the poison. He collapsed at the king's feet and confessed everything, weeping and begging for mercy. Shocked, the king immediately had the doctor imprisoned and summoned the queen and minister. When he confronted them with the doctor's confession, the queen fell to her knees and admitted her guilt. The minister stood silent and defeated. The king ordered them both executed. He then sent for the Italian boy. When the boy arrived, the king thanked him for saving his life. He appointed him as his new minister and gave him a beautiful apartment in the palace and fine clothes. The once poor orphan became a wealthy and honored man, serving as the king's most trusted advisor for the rest of his days. Through patience, cleverness, and true wisdom, the boy who had nothing found everything.